This combat footage is from a group of films of British and Canadian troops landing on the Normandy beaches on D-Day. These films only exist because a small number of cameramen risked their lives to film them. The only hint of the man behind the camera is the quick flash of a name chalked up on a slate board: Sergeant Ian Grant. But it's thanks to him that we have this particular footage of a group of Lord Lovat's Royal Marine Commandos steaming through the very choppy channel towards Sword Beach on June 6, 1944. Sergeant Grant was part of the Army Film and Photographic Unit set up in the Second World War by the War Office for propaganda training and the historic record. They were a team of serving British Army soldiers armed with a cine camera and a revolver. They were trained at Pinewood Studios before embedding themselves among Allied troops in order to film and take photos right on the front line.
When war first broke out in 1939, just one Army photographer, Geoffrey Keating, and one cameraman, Harry Rignaud, accompanied the British Expeditionary Force to France. Initially, the War Office was reluctant to embrace the propaganda benefits of combat film and photography, as the Nazis had been doing since the start of the war. It was feared that a realistic representation of the war could negatively impact recruitment. However, the need for open reporting of the war quickly became apparent. In October 1941, the Army Film and Photography Unit was formed, an expansion of the original AFU for the creation of propaganda and the historical record.
The camera goes to war. Each day it records the courage and heroism of our troops in battle. But rarely do you see the camera and the men behind it who risk those same dangers to send back their stories and pictures. Cameramen are always on the job. In the air, out in the desert, and in the trenches, it's nothing new for them. In every kind of light they work, at dusk and at dawn, from midnight to midday to bring back these perfect pictures. Like the wireless operators, the cameraman's job is a highly specialized one. He must work a complicated camera and work it right with hell let loose around it.
Fewer than a dozen men of the No. 5 section of the AFPU, including Sergeant Grant, filmed troops going ashore at Normandy on D-Day, some going in with the very first wave. They filmed and photographed events unfolding on Sword, Gold and Juno beaches, and the array of images that they captured as a team are an extraordinary record. Sergeant Grant had served years before at Dunkirk with the Royal Scots, so would have recognised the danger on D-Day was very real.
But after we got out into the more open sea and you could see the mass of ships of all sizes, it really was a most remarkable sight and a remarkable operation. I will never forget it as long as I live. I was on a very small LCI. Although the weather was better, the sea was still rough, and it was a miserable crossing. And I recall being down below with probably 20 or 30 commandos, because I was the only cameraman on that particular boat. And we were able to proceed now. We began to see and starting to hear the explosions. Big boats, big battleships were firing. So we approached the beach, and there was a lot of shell fire, mortar fire, exploding around us. I was very frightened, I must tell you. The noise of the ramp, the little wooden ramp being dropped, and people starting to run off, and I ended up in 4 feet of water, very miserable, very wet, and very frightened.
The invading forces landed at 7:25 in the morning on D-Day and were greeted with moderate fire. By the end of the day, the British had landed nearly 29,000 men on Sword Beach and 156,000 men across the Normandy beaches, bolstered by parachute and glider landings and supported by some 5,000 ships and 11,000 aircraft. The cameramen accompanying the troops shot on 35mm mute black and white film. The most widely used camera by the AFPU was the De Vries Cine camera, which was nicknamed the Lunchbox because of its rectangular, utilitarian shape. The photos and film that the AFPU captured of D-Day were used in contemporary newsreels broadcast to the public back home. They have also appeared in countless documentaries and publications since, as has the unit's footage and photographs of the Italian campaign, the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, and other events throughout the war. Their photos and film form a significant part of the visual record of the Second World War.
Sergeant Grant later recalled the massive noise of battle as the commandos landed, the sound of rockets, guns firing from Allied ships, machine gun fire from the enemy. He even heard Lord Lovat's personal piper, Bill Millin, playing his bagpipes. And yet the film is mute. Cameramen simply couldn't carry any more bulky equipment. One of the cameramen on the same beach as Sergeant Grant filmed 4 minutes of striking footage before being seriously injured from a mortar shell, while another of his AFPU colleagues was wounded in the elbow by machine gun fire. In total, 25 members of the Army Film and Photographic Unit were killed in action across the whole of the Second World War. The legacy of that unit's footage still lives on, and now the stories behind the names on the chalkboards which started each reel of film are beginning to be told.